Let me tell you what my deep research and basically vision is.
I hope there's Bigfoot. I don't think there is.
I'm not telling you nothing.
The aliens won't let it happen.
Happening now, breaking.
Bernie Sanders is angry.
Bears beats Battlestar Galactica.
What are the tips? Give me some tips on how to work with Wes Anderson.
Be ready to speak very fast and very clearly, because that's definitely one key thing.
I will only tell the truth.
Until you and 6 kids you barely know in wet bathing suits have surrounded 9 chimpanzees outside of a Wendy's. You probably really don't know yourself, okay?
Yep. And we back.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to your new favorite podcast and the best in political, sports, and paranormal news coverage. I'm your host, Wes Anderson, and this is In the Shed. It is late Sunday night, March the 9th, and I am in a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. Also, I can hang out with you tools and talk about the latest headlines, stories, and rumors in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal.
Give me one break, I need faith to believe you, faith to receive you.
I was stuck in my mind, I couldn't get out, I needed you. It felt like a prison, forever was doing my time. I need your words so I could break out of mine. Why would I believe a lie? I needed the truth, I'm sick in your mind. Let me go down to the root, I'm done being quiet, I'm speaking my mind. We gon' do this all the time. We gon' do this all the time. I need a base, I needed grace, and I needed say. I needed love, I need your word, and I needed faith. Why would I move? You live in proof, you carry the weight. We gon' do this all the time. We gon' do this all the time.
Only me and you.
Forever.
Only me and you.
Forever.
Only me and you. Only me, only.
Only me and you. Only me and you. Only me and you.
Give me one break, I need faith to believe you, faith to receive.
I won't follow the crowd, it was never enough.
Give me something, give me faith.
I just needed some peace, looking for me. Right. Someone to trust, too much in me that I couldn't confront. I need someone to help me a bunch. I needed love, you was there all the time. I needed trust, and you gave me your mind. Show me the truth, you said seek and you'll find.
The following episode of In the Shed with Wes Anderson is not like one you have ever heard before. You may notice that the first 30 minutes of the episode feature stories and emails from days past. I began recording this episode several weeks ago, however, life got in the way, and for the first time, rather than throw the whole thing out, I simply recorded the rest with updated stories and topics in the world of politics, sports, and the paranormal happening right now, and decided to bring it to you. For episode 88 of the show, I hope you enjoy a little bit of I Need Faith by Alex Jean. Yeah. Welcome into the shed on a Sunday evening. We're a little bit behind this week. It's been difficult lately to get out here on time, to get a show recorded, to bring you the news, to get it edited and get it out on all the platforms. Got a lot going on in my world. If you follow us on Twitter at In the Shed 4, you may know that I am about 2 months away from being a girl dad all over again. Yeah, the missus is expecting. We're about 2 months away from meeting our baby girl. We have a for sale sign in the yard, and we are currently house hunting. It's been busy around here as the rain falls on the roof of the shed tonight. But we're going to bring you the news. I got a big announcement for you on the show today about some changes coming to the show. It is with a heavy heart here on episode 86 of In the Shed that I let you know that our show will be ending tonight. This is the last time that you will hear these dulcet tones coming to you over the airwaves. That's a wrap for us. I'm just kidding. It's not a wrap for us. The show is not ending. We are on our way to 100 episodes. This is episode 86. This is going to be our biggest year and our best year yet. But there are changes coming to the show. And I hope that they are positive changes. One thing that has been said since the outset of this show is, why do a new show where you cover politics, sports, and the paranormal? Why not just pick a lane? Why not just have one? Why not do 1 hour of politics, or 1 hour of sports, or 1 hour of paranormal news, or even just an interview show? Why do you try to do it all? Hey, because that's what I want to do. That's what I find to be fun. That's what's allowed us to find our niche in the world and to find this awesome collection of weirdos that I call, affectionately, my tools. But I am always looking to connect with you in a better way, to improve on what we do here, and so we are going to try something new. It won't happen this week because, hey, this episode of the show probably won't even air until tomorrow, okay? But in the next couple of weeks, you will be getting more of me whether you like it or not, okay? We're going to try something new. We're going to do Tuesday morning politics, Wednesday morning sports, paranormal Thursdays, and our regularly scheduled Friday show. Yeah. It's going to be just a quick segment in the mornings. On Tuesday, 10 minutes of politics. On Wednesday, 10 minutes of sports. On Thursday, 10 minutes of the paranormal. It might be one story, one idea, one thought, a couple of emails, one big idea each morning to start off your day, just 10 minutes. And then our regular show to kick off your weekend. This is going to allow us to change it up a little bit, to empty the news desk of some of the stories that have stacked up over time, and hopefully serve as a way for us to find some new listeners as well. We're always trying to grow this thing. I appreciate anyone who clicks that play button, whether you've been with us from the beginning or just found us tonight. I appreciate you. The aim has always been for this to be a once-a-week podcast, and hey, sometimes we don't get but one episode out in a month. Sometimes it's a couple months in between episodes, but I'm doing the best that I can. For free. The best that I can. And so as we try some new things and move on, in the next couple weeks, you will have weeks where you get politics on Tuesdays, sports on Wednesdays, paranormal Thursdays, and a Friday show. I think it's going to be great. We will see what happens. We also have some awesome guests lined up for interview episodes in the near future. We're going to try some different things on social media, and we're going to push toward 100 episodes. The average podcast doesn't even make it to 10. The average podcast never surpasses 100 listeners. Hey, we've been downloaded 15,000 times. 68 countries and counting. We have listeners all over these United States. Every time I'm in my shed, I'm gathered here with a few hundred of you, and I do not take it for granted. We are building something special. It's a lot of fun. I love interacting with you online. And the only way that we're able to build is because of word of mouth. It's still how we grow. So thank you to you, our listeners. We're going to try this new format together, so be on the lookout for that. All right, enough of that. Let's get to some comments and corrections from our last episode. Our humble little show is being listened to across the globe, 68 countries and counting. We are, of course, being listened to all over this great country of ours, all 50 states, but we are still continuing to grow in popularity worldwide. Again, our top 10 looks like this, the same as it did last week. The United States is number 1, followed by India, the UK, Canada at number 4, Singapore at 5, Australia at 6, France at 7, China at 8, Mexico at 9, and Germany bringing up the rear at number 10. Our downloads in India have slowed to a crawl. Where are you, India? I want to be on a billboard in India. Put me on a billboard in India. We are, however, on fire in the UK as of late, so I am thankful for you, my United Kingdom tools. I want to give a special shout out to our 11 new listeners in Ireland this week. Gia Hotich, Ireland. I'm aware of how bad that was. That is a particularly difficult one for a kid from Alabama. We're currently averaging more listeners per episode than ever before. Still true thanks to you. We're still adding followers over on X. We're up over 11,000 there now. You can find us there at In the Shed 4. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at In the Shed with Wes Anderson 6670. Please continue supporting the show by leaving us a 5-star review wherever you are listening, and share the show with your friends. Word of mouth is still how we grow. If you keep supporting the show, I'll keep bringing you the news. If you subscribe, like, share, and review, we'll keep growing this thing together. No corrections this week. I must have been perfect on our last episode. We've got a great show for you today, but first let's get to some listener emails. Our first email comes from Terry J. from Wisconsin, who writes, Wes, we ought to just send troops into Mexico and wipe out the cartel once and for all. What do you think? No, Terry. What you're talking about is an invasion. We have enough problems on our southern border without invading Mexico. Is it aggravating that the Mexican government and those who are in power over there right now have such a symbiotic relationship with the cartel? Yes. And they really do. Their strategy to limit the loss of life is basically to keep their hands off the cartel. And on the one hand, I understand it. And on the other hand, I hate that the cartel is running that country. I don't think boots on the ground and an invasion of Mexico is the way to go. President Trump has labeled certain cartels as terrorist organizations. We have secured the southern border. I think the illegal crossings have dropped like 95% or something. We are having issues there between Border Patrol and cartel members. I read last week that we have stationed some military drones down there. And if the cartel is firing across our border at our Border Patrol or our National Guard units who are helping out, that is certainly a problem. Definitely something we need to address. I don't think a full-scale invasion of Mexico is the answer, although I have heard some political pundits suggesting that we send in special ops to take on the cartel. Thank you for listening and writing into the show, Terry. Our next email comes from Lila from Ohio, who says, Wes, I miss the days when your show was lighthearted and funny, when you just told stories and talked about cryptids. Lila, I think that our show is still, for the most part, a lighthearted news show. I know we've covered some serious stories on our last couple episodes, but hey, those are the things happening in the world that you need to know about. We still talk about cryptids. We still tell stories. In fact, if you want more cryptids, then you stay tuned, because we're about to have our 3rd annual Tournament of the Weird. Yeah. If you follow us over on X at In the Shed 4, you can participate. This is where we have a March Madness style tournament between cryptids, mysterious creatures, and popular conspiracy theories. The first year aliens won. Last year it was the Mothman, who will take home the title this year. The In the Shed with Wes Anderson Tournament of the Weird. Follow us over on X so that you can be on the lookout for that. You can get your cryptid fix. You can cast your ballot and make your voice heard. Thank you for writing into the show, Lila. Hang in there. It's still going to be lighthearted. We're still going to have fun together right here in my shed, in the backyard of my home in Alabama. And finally, Tim from West Virginia asks, Wes, you talked about writing a book. Did you ever finish it? Tim, thank you for listening to the show. It is evident that you've been doing so for a while. I did complete my book. I had been working on a novel. It's been my goal my entire life to write a book, and I finally did it. Finished it in 2024. 125,000 words, 252 pages. It takes place in West Virginia, ironically, Tim. And I hope that one day it will be available to you for purchase, so you can read it for yourself and write into the show and tell me how bad it is. But I am proud that I finished it, and I'm partial to it. I think it's a good book. That's all the listener emails this week. If you have any thoughts that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. All right, let's switch to this. Let's get to the news in the world of politics, and let's hit the headlines. But first, a word from our sponsor. In the Shed with Wes Anderson is brought to you by Armchair Anchor, your source for truly independent journalism. Armchair Anchor provides a weekly newsletter, articles, essays, interviews, movie, album, and book reviews, poetry, and more, covering topics such as world news, politics, sports, faith, family, business, and the unexplained. Visit intheshedwithwes.substack.com, where you can subscribe for just $5 a month for exclusive content. That's the price of a single Starbucks latte. Again, that's intheshedwithwes.substack.com. Armchair Anchor, authentic community, honest viewpoints, constant curiosity. Treasury Secretary, tariffs can restore the American dream, writes the American Conservative. FBI arrests U.S. Army soldiers over alleged sale of national defense information to China, reports Just the News. U.S. added 151,000 jobs last month, slightly below expectations, says the Wall Street Journal. From ProPublica, how Doge's cuts to the IRS threaten to cost more than Doge will ever save. And finally, researchers and doctors rally for science and against Trump cuts, and that is according to the AP. Our first story in the world of politics this week, Trump says he appreciates Zelensky's message on Ukraine peace. U.S. President Donald Trump said he's received a letter from Volodymyr Zelensky agreeing to come to the negotiating table to strike a peace deal in Ukraine. I appreciate that he sent this letter, Trump said as he addressed a joint session of Congress in Washington. It came after Zelensky said in a social media post that he was ready to work under Trump's strong leadership to achieve a lasting peace. The statements indicate a cooling of tensions between the leaders following their fiery meeting in the Oval Office last week. In his address to Congress, Trump said he received an important letter from Zelensky on Tuesday before reading what he said were excerpts from it. Parts of what he read used precisely the same language as the statement posted by Zelensky earlier on Tuesday. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, Trump said. Continuing to read from what he said was Zelensky's letter, Trump said, My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. Trump also said Zelensky told him that he was ready to sign a rare earth minerals deal with the U.S. Ukraine is yet to comment on the letter. The U.S. president also said there had been serious discussions with Russia, and he'd received strong signals that they're ready for peace as well. Trump did not indicate when the talks took place or whether he was personally involved in them. It's time to end this senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides, he added. Earlier on Tuesday, Zelensky described the White House showdown with Trump as regrettable in the wake of U.S. announcing a pause in military aid to Kyiv. Zelensky said it was time to make things right after Trump had accused him of not being ready to come to the negotiating table. The Ukrainian leader also outlined the first stages of how the war could be ended. The Oval Office meeting between Zelensky and U.S. officials last week was due to conclude with the two parties signing a deal that would grant the U.S. access to rare earth minerals in Ukraine. Accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III, the Ukrainian delegation left without signing the deal. Trump told Zelensky, come back when you're ready for peace. So, a little over a week ago, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky came to Washington to meet with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and crew, and it did not go well. It did not go well at all, and there's a lot of hubbub that has been made about it. A lot of left-leaning media, journalists, and pundits who were quick to say how embarrassed they were that the President of the United States would act like a petulant child. Those on the right said that Donald Trump showed strength and that President Zelensky was ungrateful. And I think that they're both right, if I'm being honest. To a degree, I think that they were both right. Look, I think President Zelensky got some bad advice, is what I think happened. I think some people were in his ear, some people, maybe even U.S. politicians, were telling him to go in there and to be front-facing and try to use presence in front of the American media to add pressure to Donald Trump to do things that Donald Trump didn't have interest in doing, most importantly of which was guaranteeing security to Ukraine if Ukraine was willing to sign this rare earth minerals deal. And Donald Trump had told Zelensky in private that that was not going to happen, and Zelensky made a push for it and mentioned the importance of it in front of the media. It was a calculated risk, and he got some bad advice. Because I think what he failed to understand and grasp in the moment that maybe he understands now is that Donald J. Trump is a very transactional person. He comes from the business world. He does not believe in giving without receiving. You see it in his approach to tariffs being reciprocal. You see it in his business relationships, his personal relationships. He is a transactional guy. He's someone who is willing to give to you, but he expects to receive back. America has sent hundreds of billions of dollars worth of aid and military equipment to Ukraine. And in Donald Trump's mind, it's time that we recoup something for that investment. Enter the rare earth minerals deal. That's what it's about. It's about recouping some of what we have invested so that we are not ripped off, because that is how Donald Trump views the world and how he interacts with other countries. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that that's who he is. And apparently President Zelensky did not have a firm grasp on who he was dealing with when he sat down with Donald Trump. And the thing is, if President Trump had agreed to security protections that, while vitally important from the Ukrainian standpoint, if he had agreed to those publicly, it would have undercut any leverage he had to negotiate with Putin and with Russia. But at the same time, you have to understand that if we make this rare earth minerals deal and we have American companies stationed and working in an area of Ukraine where war is currently happening, that would become an area that Russia could not risk attacking unless they were willing to enter into a war with the United States. And Trump knows that, and that's the game that he was playing. So I think President Zelensky made a simple miscalculation. But I also think the word that he used to describe the interaction between the two as regrettable is the right word. Because it was regrettable. Should he be more grateful? Should he be more thankful? Should he not push the envelope when we're already helping, when we've already helped so much? You can make that case and make that argument. I won't begrudge you for it, okay? But the man is also representing his country that is on the brink of being annihilated. They cannot win this war, not without a lot of help. So yeah, he's making the tour with his palms open and his hands out. But what choice does he really have? If a peace deal is not struck, not only does his country lose their sovereignty, but hey, he probably loses his life, or at least his freedom. He's backed into a corner. He doesn't have much of a choice. He made a miscalculation. It's also true that Donald Trump did not have to accept his bait. Zelensky mentioned something that he had already been told was not going to happen in front of the press, and Donald Trump could have easily handled it by swatting it away and saying, we'll talk about that at another time. We're here to focus on the rare earth minerals deal. But he just can't help himself. He just can't help himself. If somebody baits Donald Trump, hey, he's taking that bait like a big mouth bass, okay? I remind you, I'm located in Alabama. And those of you on the right, I have to push back on your narrative a little bit, because Donald Trump did act in a way that was emotionally immature. Whether you think he was right or not, he could have handled it in a much more professional and presidential manner, but he took the bait. I also think that something that hasn't been talked about enough that should be in this whole tiff between Zelensky and Trump is that Zelensky was speaking in English, his second language. He's having to listen to what Donald Trump says and translate it in his mind, understand it in its proper context, and then respond to it appropriately. And from my perspective, it looked like he was struggling to do so. Donald Trump was speaking in metaphors, using turns of phrase that may not be common over in the Ukraine as far as holding the cards and different things. It seemed like Zelensky didn't quite understand what Trump was saying. They started getting combative. Trump did not appreciate the hostility, and he let him have it, which is what he's used to doing as a CEO of a company. Okay. The main thing here is peace. The main thing here is getting this war settled, because millions of people have lost their lives completely unnecessarily And hey, you can say whatever you want about Donald Trump. He acted like a petulant child, this, that, and the other. One thing you have to be honest about is it seems a lot of times like he's one of the only people who's seriously interested in ending this war. Who really does want peace? The former administration seemed more interested in funding Ukraine. The European Union, NATO seem more interested in funding Ukraine rather than getting Russia and Ukraine on the same page and reaching a deal to end this war. And you have to be realistic. If you're looking for peace, you have to be realistic and understand that it takes compromise from both nations. This war is not going to end without Ukraine giving up something. It's just not. And it can't end unless Vladimir Putin comes to the table, which means that you have to have some leverage on him. You have to find something that he wants and give it to him, or you have to find some way that you can assert authority over him in order to get him to come to the table. Trump saying it takes both parties is 100% correct. And unfortunately, previously it has seemed like other nations and other world leaders are only interested in bringing Ukraine to the table. I get it, Vladimir Putin is a bad guy. He has started this war. I'm not on his side whatsoever. I am not a Russian apologist. But I do agree with Donald Trump that it's time for peace. I do agree that the cost in human lives is too significant a price to continue to pay. The people of two nations are suffering. And if you're serious about a peace deal, you've got to meet Ukraine where they are, but you also have to find a way to get Putin to the table. And that's a very complicated and tenuous task, and one that most in the world don't seem interested in at all. War is a racket. It is a big money maker. It's unfortunate, but it's true. I think their meeting was regrettable. I think Trump could have easily handled it much better. I think that Zelensky made a miscalculation. I think the English as a second language actually did play a role here. And it seems like now Zelensky is ready to go. And I, for one, hope that Donald Trump and company can get Putin to the table and find out a way to stop this thing. Because as we speak, Putin is still launching missiles. Ukrainian and Russian young men are still dying. And the fate of the world could hang in the balance. That's how I see it. Our next story in the world of politics this week, Alabama gave UAB permission to harvest organs from dead prison inmates, university claims. The families of men who died in Alabama prisons and were returned without all of their organs sat in court on Tuesday, watching as lawyers for the University of Alabama at Birmingham argued that the school's contract allowed them to keep organs after autopsies. The hearing had mentions of Nazi Germany, rats, artificial intelligence, and illegal organ harvesting. As the family members shook their head from the audience, their lawyers fought back. "They are retaining organs without authority," said Michael Strickland. "There's nothing in the contract that says they can harvest and retain these organs. You can't just illegally harvest an organ, and that's what we have here." The family's lawyers compared the situation to a funeral home taking the skin off a body because they like someone's tattoos. That's Nazi Germany. That's what we're doing here, Your Honor. The comments came during a hearing at the Montgomery County Courthouse where lawyers for UAB and the prison system asked Judge J.R. Gaines to dismiss the case. A UAB lawyer said that contracts between the Alabama Department of Corrections and the university, which was terminated after the lawsuits were filed, were legal contracts between two state entities. Nothing the university did while performing the autopsies fell outside of the contract, he said. "Alabama law is absolutely clear," said UAB attorney Jay Ezell. "It is a state contract between two state agencies." He added that UAB under the agreement was allowed to keep organs for testing purposes. He did not clarify what type of testing had taken place. The families of Arthur Olin Stapler, Jim William Kennedy, Anthony Perez Brackens, Kelvin Lamar Moore, Charles Singleton, Alice McIntyre, and Barry Culver are each suing the Alabama Department of Corrections, the University of Alabama system which operates the University of Alabama at Birmingham and its medical school, and other various people associated with those institutions. The families are represented by lawyers Strickland, Lauren Farino, Dustin Fowler, and Melina Goldfarb. Strickland and Farino argued in court on Tuesday. Ezell told the judge that the cases should be dismissed on several legal grounds, including the Alabama law gives prison system and UAB's Board of Trustees immunity in lawsuits. He added that organs aren't personal property. And that's a wild argument to make, legally, that someone's organs are not their personal property. I digress. So several of the family's claims were invalid. Ezell also said that he thought some of the case law included in the lawsuits came from fake hallucinated cases and was written by ChatGPT or some form of artificial intelligence. In trying to respond, I'm trying to sort through what is real and what is not real, he said. What is Alabama law and not what ChatGPT made up to be Alabama law? Strickland, who spoke on behalf of the families, assured the judge that no case law was made up. I have no idea how to do that, he quipped. I'm old. Strickland argued against the immunity claim, saying that the contract itself was illegal. He and Fareno cited a state law that allows only district attorneys, circuit judges, the governor, or attorney general to order autopsies, not prison wardens nor prison representatives. He also cited state law that prohibits medical examiners from retaining organs without approval from next of kin. Following last year's controversy, the department does not currently have a contract with an outside provider to conduct autopsies. The deaths that do result in autopsies required by state law are conducted by the Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences. In court filings, UAB's lawyers have said that they could try to find the organs and return them to the families, but Fareno and Strickland said that that is no longer enough. The organs would presumably be returned in a bag, and then the families would have to pay for DNA testing to confirm their identity. Then they would have to disinter their loved ones if they'd already been buried, and rebury them. Strickland added that the string of prison autopsies performed by the world-renowned university financially benefited UAB. He mentioned the Henrietta Lacks case where a woman's blood cells were taken in 1951 and used for scientific research. According to the National Institute of Health, Lacks' cells led to lucrative discoveries from which her family received no financial benefit. That's what was able to happen here, Strickland said. He said UAB wasn't even denying that they kept the organs. They were only arguing they had the right to do so. Fareno said she suspects the practice of keeping organs without family notification has been happening since the prison and UAB first entered into their prison contract in 2006. She said UAB's argument that the whole case comes down to a contract dispute could not be further from the truth. And, Strickland said, the issue might not just be with prisoner autopsies. He said a coroner called him to say that the young girl who had died of a gunshot to the head had her pelvis removed during a UAB postmortem exam years ago, and the university was now trying to give it back. You can't just dump them out into the public because you got caught. They want to hide behind a contract, Strickland said. It's an illegal contract to start with. They violated the law. Fareno said, UAB, it seems, is trying to purge their shelves of organs taken unlawfully. The judge said he would give each side several weeks to submit their arguments in writing. Ezell told the judge that he had spent the morning being called a Nazi, a rat, and a liar. I don't think he called you a rat, the judge replied. He said rats were scattering. Don't take it personally. Hey, and shout out to Judge Gaines, because apparently he is a baller. Following the hearing, family members gathered around the courthouse steps with their lawyers. Kevin Moore's family gathered close around Fareno. In their lawsuit last year, the family said they were given a sealed red bag with a container inside that UAB claimed contained Kelvin's organs. That happened after a supervisor in the pathology department told them it was the UAB policy not to return organs to families after an autopsy. Simon Moore, Kelvin Moore's brother, said that he wants someone to be held accountable for what happened to his brother's body. These organs are a part of my brother's body and a part of your loved one. They do not belong to the state, he said, as other families quietly agreed. This is wrong on every level. We cannot ever be made whole. There's not a day that we don't think about our loved ones and what he had to go through. We are forever scarred and ever destroyed because of this act, and it must stop because UAB has run amok. They've run rogue. His mother wore a silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant framing an old photo of Kelvin. We're not going to let this go, she said quietly. So, this is a story that is wild, incredibly bizarre, and full of injustice. This is a follow-up to a story that we have covered previously. We have been on this since the beginning. We cover politics internationally on a national scale and even locally. And this is something that is happening right here at home in my neck of the woods. UAB is a phenomenal school. My youngest sister and my brother-in-law both graduated from that university. It's a school that I have always thought well of. But they are clearly and unfortunately and disturbingly in the wrong here, because there is indisputable evidence that as a part of their contractual agreement with Alabama prisons, they were harvesting organs for research from prisoners who had passed away without the knowledge or permission of the next of kin. And hey, I understand the benefit of medical research. I understand that every person in every business has the right to their day in court. I understand that everybody deserves to be defended. But I don't have a lot of respect for Jay Azell, whoever he is, being the attorney representing them on this case and saying that the organs of these prisoners who have passed away are not their personal property and that the school has the right to hold on to them. If that is your argument, I am not on your side. I find it to be morally reprehensible, and I disagree with you with every fiber of my being. Entirely. From a shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama. He says that's what the law says in the state of Alabama. Hey, if that's what the law says, it is an unjust law that is in violation of human rights. Because this is human trafficking. Taking body parts from human beings without permission and receiving financial benefit from doing so, hey, that's human trafficking. I don't know what else to call it, and this is the third episode of the show in a row where we are somehow covering the theft of human bodies and institutions benefiting and profiting from that theft. It's absurd. It's incredible in all of the worst ways. And I hope that the courts here in Alabama and that the judicial system steps in and puts a stop to this once and for all. Never allows this sort of thing to happen again, and even finds in favor of the families in such a way that they exact some level of justice here. They will never be made whole, but they deserve some level of accountability for UAB, its medical school, and the prison system of Alabama, and anyone that had knowledge of this happening, who participated in it, and who knew that this was going on without the permission or knowledge of families involved. It's wild. This is the kind of thing that is happening to the Uyghurs in China who are in prison camps. This is the kind of thing that did happen in Nazi Germany. This is not something that should be happening in America in 2025. It's disturbing. Your Honor, their organs were not their personal property. Hey, miss me with that nonsense. Miss me with that garbage. I will fight you for charity. And I'll win. I'm small, but I'm wiry. We will continue to cover this on the show. We will keep up with this story. We'll keep you updated and informed. I just can't believe that this is reality and that this was actually happening, maybe all the way back to 2006. These 6 or 7 families represented in this lawsuit, unfortunately, are only the tip of the iceberg. UAB does not look good in this situation. The Alabama Department of Corrections and the state itself do not look good in this situation, and I hope justice is served. Our next story in the world of politics this week: a scientist experimented on herself to treat her cancer. It worked. When Beta Halsey learned in summer of 2020 that her breast cancer had come back, she made a bold decision. As a virologist at the University of Zagreb in Croatia, she knew that researchers around the world were testing virus-based cancer treatments that could avoid the destructive side effects of conventional treatments like chemotherapy. Halsey, who studies viruses for a living, decided to test some of them on herself. With her oncologist's approval, she made herself a test subject and worked with colleagues to inject herself with 2 types of viruses that she cultivated in a lab, the science journal Nature reported. Over several weeks, her homegrown remedy caused her tumor to shrink, enabling surgeons to remove it. In a study documenting her experiment published August in the peer-reviewed journal Vaccines, and they might want to think about changing the name of that peer-reviewed journal. Maybe try inoculations. Vaccines has become a loaded and controversial term in our society and culture today. I digress. Hallisey and her co-authors said that the unconventional treatment has left her in remission for almost 4 years. Bioethicists told the Washington Post that they were split on Hallisey's decision to enter the storied controversial tradition of self-experimentation in medicine and publish her results. While Hallisey was uniquely qualified to weigh the decision and carry out her tests on herself, she still may have lacked the perspective of an objective researcher as her own test subject, they said. And her study of just one patient isn't likely to provide enough information to draw conclusions about the treatments that she tested. From my perspective, self-experimentation is not fundamentally unethical, said Alta Charo, a professor emerita of law and bioethics at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. It may be unwise. It may indeed be tainted by an unrealistic set of expectations, but I don't see it as fundamentally unethical. Hallisey and 2 of her co-authors did not respond to requests for comment, but Nature identified her as the researcher who was her own test subject. Hallisey's study describes the person treated as a 50-year-old self-experimenting female virologist, and she's the only person on the author list who meets that description. Studies exploring the use of viruses to treat cancer date back over a decade. The Food and Drug Administration first approved a form of oncolytic virus therapy, the use of viruses modified to specifically attack cancer cells to treat skin cancer, in 2015. Research since then has sought to widen the range of cancers that OVT can be applied to. But clinical trials for novel treatments like OVT are sometimes limited, Hallisey and her co-authors wrote in their study, by being carried out first on patients whose health may have already been affected by conventional treatments like chemotherapy or radiotherapy. Hallisey was in a different situation. She was several years removed from her breast cancer diagnosis in 2016 and her subsequent chemotherapy, and she was a rare subject who had the means and the know-how to produce and administer her own experimental viral treatment. Hallisey and her colleagues used 2 types of viruses, a strain of measles used in vaccines, and these things just terrify me. The more I learn about the scientific advancements in medicine, as amazing as it is, it terrifies me. A strain of measles used in vaccines. I digress. And vesicular stomatitis virus, which affects livestock, that she prepared in her own lab, according to the study. The viruses were injected directly into the tumor at various intervals over about 6 weeks. Around 11 days into the regimen, Hallisey's tumor began to shrink and continued to diminish gradually until it was small enough to be surgically excised after the 6 weeks of injections had ended. It was a sterling result, the study states. The treatment came with few serious side effects save for the day when Hallisey developed a fever and enabled surgeons to remove the tumor without further growth or spread in her body. Hallisey's breast cancer had returned twice after her 2016 diagnosis. After the viral treatment, she's been cancer-free for 45 months, the study says. With the experiment, Hallisey joins a long line of researchers who have tested medical theories on themselves. Their attempts have led to significant medical breakthroughs and, in some cases, harm or death. Jesse Lazier, an American physician studying yellow fever in the 19th century, died of the disease after allowing himself to be bitten by a mosquito to prove how it was transmitted. Peruvian medical student Daniel Carrion died in 1885 after infecting himself with Carrion's disease, which was later named after him. That just seems cruel. The man died of the disease, and you name it after him. Don't be naming any disease that takes my life after me. Hallisey's self-experimentation didn't appear to be nearly as risky as those fatal examples, said Hank Greeley, the director of Stanford University's Center for Law and the Biosciences. But he said critics might still question if a researcher in Hallisey's position could give informed consent to be a test subject and evaluate the potential benefits and harms of an experiment without bias. In general, it's viewed as a bad idea for physicians to take care of their family members or themselves because they lack the objectivity necessary to do a good job, Greeley said. The same thing holds for self-experimentation. Hallisey and her co-authors wrote that the study did not undergo a review by an ethics committee because it involved self-experimentation, and that the subject was fully aware of her illness as well as available therapies and wanted to try an innovative approach in a scientifically sound way. Opponents of the practice also argue that publicizing cases like Hallisey's risks encouraging less qualified patients to self-experiment in more dangerous ways, said Greeley and Charo, the bioethics professor. They added that Hallisey's study of her response to OVT was likely too limited in scope to contribute reliably to research on the treatment. Not every experiment is research, Charo said. Hallisey and her co-authors acknowledged in the study that it was isolated, but said that it should encourage clinical trials to assess the efficacy of OVT in early stages of cancer. They also said the circumstances of Hallisey's study would be very difficult to repeat. The study was feasible only due to the unique situation in which the patient was also an expert virologist, the study states. So, I thought this was a very interesting story and one worth covering on the show. This lady, who is a virologist by trade, gets diagnosed with cancer for the third or fourth time. She's already been through this, already survived it, already undergone chemotherapy, and she gets that terrible, awful, bad news again. And this time she decides to try something wholly different to treat herself with viruses that she helps create in a lab that are designed to attack cancer cells. And it works. And it works. Absolutely incredible. And you hear stories like this from time to time about doctors treating themselves or people who opt to use natural remedies or alternative medicines and happen to have success against the type of cancer that they have. And my questions are always the same. I understand that this is a very unique situation, that this lady is a professional virologist. I know that typically it is not the best idea for people, even those with a medical degree, to treat themselves. I get it. However, she had success against the big C. Why would there not immediately be a study launched and funded with 100 people undergoing similar treatment? If it worked for her, it may work for others. Why not put the money there? Why not do the experimentation? Why not try and see? I realize it would be difficult to find others that check all of the same boxes as her, that got an early diagnosis, that had not undergone chemotherapy or radiation treatment yet. I get it, okay? But I'm just saying, we always hear about these things that worked for a certain individual or for a person in a very specific situation. We rarely hear about those things then being tested in a wider test group of subjects. And I'm not going to get all conspiratorial. It's not that time of the show. I'm not saying that there is a cure for cancer out there that is being hidden by any means. But hey, our quote-unquote healthcare system certainly benefits more from us staying sick than us being well. And that's just facts. That's just facts from a guy in his shed in the backyard of his home in Alabama. But this lady took a risk. She tried something different. And thank God she had success. And now she is well, she is healthy. She's a success story rather than a cautionary tale, and that is something worth celebrating. We bring you the news on this show, but we want to make sure we bring you some good news sometimes too. Because life is hard and this world is a dark place sometimes. There's enough bad news going around. Hey, here's a dose of good news for the day. And maybe it will lead to good news for others. That's certainly my hope. Our last story in the world of politics this week: Florida doctor who didn't wear hearing aids during colonoscopy couldn't hear patient yelling, state health officials say. And for this story, naturally, we go to the state of Florida. Of course. A hearing-impaired doctor was placed on probation after Florida health officials said he began performing a colonoscopy without his hearing aids and did not know the patient was not fully sedated, according to Florida Board of Medicine documents filed this month. And I'm not laying on that table. I'm coming up swinging, and it doesn't take very long, okay? If I am at all alert during the beginning of a colonoscopy, I'm coming up swinging. I digress. The doctor, Ishwari Prasad, was accused of not immediately stopping the colonoscopy when the patient began yelling during the procedure at a surgery center in Tampa on June 5, 2023, according to an administrative complaint filed by the state health department. In a separate colonoscopy performed the same day, Prasad delegated part of the procedure to a surgical tech who is not a licensed doctor, the complaint alleges. Prasad uses assistive hearing devices to communicate with his surgical team and was not wearing them during either of the procedures, according to the complaint. Prasad did not respond to a request for comment on Tuesday. Perhaps because he couldn't hear you. Perhaps because he did not have his hearing aids in yet again. The complaint filed in October accuses Prasad of 2 counts of medical malpractice. The minimum standard of care requires doctors to immediately stop performing a colonoscopy if a patient is not fully sedated, the document says, and I would agree that is the minimum amount of care. That you care enough to stop performing a colonoscopy if someone is yelling and screaming in horror and pain. According to a settlement reached this year, Prasad was fined $7,500 and restricted from performing gastroenterology procedures. He neither admitted nor denied the allegations, according to the settlement. According to health department records, Prasad began practicing medicine in the early 1980s in New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, specializing in gastroenterology and internal medicine. His license in Florida was issued in 1990, according to records. So, I don't even know where to begin with this story. This story is wild. This is absolutely absurd and one of the more tragic stories that we've ever covered on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. This poor man went to the doctor for a routine procedure, but one in which a very important detail is that he is supposed to be unaware that it is even happening. As someone that has had far too many colonoscopies for a 35-year-old, I'll let you know that my favorite thing about it is that I am completely unaware that it is even happening. And this man was on the table, screaming, hollering like a hit dog. And Mr. Prasad, his trusted physician, just kept on going. And I feel bad for even making jokes. I feel bad for even laughing because this was not a comical situation for this poor guy. But I have so many questions. Hey, where were the nurses? Where was the anesthesiologist? Because apparently they weren't doing their jobs either. How come nobody on this man's team said, hey, doc, put in your hearing aids? Hey, doc, this man is clearly not asleep. Hey, doc, maybe let go of that rope for a minute. We got some problems. There's a whole lot of heads that should be rolling after this, not just Dr. Prasad, although he is certainly to blame for his actions. And then he only gets fined $7,500. I feel like the fine for something like this should be a lot steeper than $7,500. You can't even buy a used vehicle in America in the year of our Lord 2025 for $7,500. At least not one that runs okay. This man got fined the price of a 2006 Ford Focus with the chip paint for doing a surgical procedure on a patient who was not put to sleep at all. Hey, I know you've had your license for a long time, but doc, this is not 1879. We may not understand how it works, but we know that if you give certain anesthesiological drugs to an individual, they go night-night, and they wake up when it's time. And that important step did not happen to this poor man in Tampa, Florida. And for his sake, I'm so glad that his name was not mentioned in the article. He's already suffered enough. And this doctor should never be allowed to do any type of surgical procedure on a human being or even an animal ever again in his life. Dr. Prasad, I'm sure that you were a great doctor in your day. Hey, it's time to hang up the stethoscope. Your time has passed. You can't be in the surgery room passing off people on the table to your surgery tech that isn't even licensed to perform the work that you've been entrusted to perform. It's absurd. Truly tragic. And it's hard not to laugh. It ain't funny, but it's hard not to laugh. That's all the news in the world of politics this week. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of sports, and let's hit the headlines. Tiger's son Charlie Woods fails to qualify for U.S. Open. Bill Belichick's girlfriend not banned from school, according to UNC. Steelers trade wide receiver George Pickens to Cowboys for third-round pick. Browns GM says Nick Chubb deal increasingly unlikely. Former Utah quarterback Cam Rising retires due to repeated injuries. Mississippi State football to build $60 million indoor practice facility. Curry calls injury a gut punch but won't rush return. Jason Tatum says he needs to be better. Panthers cut Jadeveon Clowney. And finally, Florida Gators and basketball coach Todd Golden agreed to 6-year, $40.5 million extension. Our first story in the world of sports this week, Malcolm star Frankie Muniz gets no respect from fellow NASCAR truck drivers. Nobody goes with me. Frankie Muniz channeled his inner Rodney Dangerfield this week, saying his fellow on-track drivers in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series don't respect the former Malcolm in the Middle star turned racer on track. Muniz had a promising start to his NASCAR Truck Series career with a top 10 finish last week in Daytona. But after a multi-car wreck this weekend in Atlanta, the former child TV star bemoaned that his Hollywood credentials aren't exactly helping his on-track reputation. After a trackside reporter asked about his disappointing day, he said, "I definitely don't get respect out there, 100%. Nobody goes with me. I think someone put me 3 wide and pushed me to the outside." Muniz said he had another top 10 finish in his second race after running well Saturday before he was collected in the pileup. "I don't think anyone expects us to run up there. So the fact that we were there on merit, no lucky breaks, we raced our way up there. I felt like we were just cruising," he said. "I'm hoping to earn respect out there, and I hope with how tight I was racing people and I was fairly clean the entire time. Until I keep doing it, it's going to be tough. Nobody respects me. NASCAR doesn't even know their own rules." Muniz is 2 races deep in his first full-time season with the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He drives a number 33 Ford for Ream Brothers Racing, marking a significant step in his racing career. So, did you know that Frankie Muniz, yes, that Frankie Muniz is a NASCAR Truck Series driver? He's a professional race car, or I guess race truck driver. Yeah. Even though my shed is located in the backyard of my home in the glorious state of Alabama, NASCAR is not something that we usually cover on this show. It's just a bunch of left turns, okay? I'm just saying, they just go left. They drive in a circle. It's good for a nap, and that's about all. It's a lot of fun in person, if you want to go to Talladega. It makes for a good Will Ferrell movie, alright. But it's not something that we typically cover on this show, but I thought this was interesting. I know that's a word I've used a few times already. It gets pointed out to me on email. You call everything interesting. Well, hey, I find the stories that I cover on this show to be interesting. That's why I covered them. Okay. I thought this was fascinating that Frankie Muniz, the former child star from the forever underrated Malcolm in the Middle, is now accomplishing his dream of being a professional NASCAR driver. And he's actually not bad. He's better than Danica Patrick already. But here he is saying after a couple races that he has not yet earned his street cred, that people do not respect him on the track. They think that he is there for reasons other than merit, even though he's performed very well. And I just gotta say, Frankie, you spent all those years portraying a middle child. You should understand, this is how it goes for us. We are the forgotten ones. We are the ones who were overlooked. We are the ones who aren't the oldest. Not the ones with all the responsibility, but hey, we're also not the babies of the family. We don't get away with everything. In fact, we incur a large percentage of the blame, deservedly or not. And that's just me rambling, because I too am a middle child. And I get it. It's me, it's Malcolm, and it's Jermaine. J. Cole, we are the middle children of this generation. I think maybe the problem is that you are driving a Ford. As a Chevy man, I think that maybe the problem is that you are driving a Ford. And after reading this article, I think that all of us have the same question: if Malcolm grew up to be a race car driver, what is Dewey up to? What is Dewey doing these days? What about Francis? He always seemed to have a good heart and a good head on his shoulders. What is Francis up to if Malcolm is a professional race car driver? I don't even want to think about Reese. That guy was trouble. He's probably a youth pastor somewhere. And nobody cares about Jamie. Sorry, Jamie. If Frankie keeps racing this well, he will certainly get his due. Couple good starts for him in the NASCAR Truck Series. And if you ever watch the show, we all now know that the golf cart scene could have gone completely different if only Malcolm was behind the wheel instead of Francis. And hey, maybe you would have reached your goals sooner if your dad wasn't cooking meth with Mr. Pinkman. I'm not saying, I'm just saying that's a fan theory. That in fact those two shows have ties together. And we're covering this on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. We're talking NASCAR. We're talking Malcolm in the Middle and a little bit of Breaking Bad. Our next story in the world of sports: President Donald Trump planning to create college sports commission, per report. President Donald Trump is making plans to create a commission on college athletics, Yahoo Sports reported on Wednesday. The story, citing multiple people within Congress and college athletics, reported that most details are being kept private for now and that it's unclear when an announcement may come. However, the commission is expected to include college sports stakeholders, prominent business people with deep connections to college football, and perhaps even a former coach and administrator. College sports leaders have petitioned for congressional aid in the changing world of its athletics, as more money is going to players and schools than ever before in the name, image, and likeness era. The commission is expected to examine a number of topics across college sports, according to the story. That includes player movement in the transfer portal, booster compensation paid to athletes, whether college athletes will be employees of the university or remain students, Title IX implications on revenue share payments, and conference membership and TV contracts, according to the report. Dellinger added the commission could be created via executive order. The news comes after Trump gave a graduation address at the University of Alabama, where he met with former Crimson Tide coach Nick Saban. It was there that Trump and Saban communicated about college sports legislation. So, this is not an official announcement, but it's still something to keep an eye on. It's still a development that is likely to occur that could make a difference in the landscape of college athletics. Make no bones about it, I am not a fan of one Nick Saban. I am an Auburn Tiger guy, if you're new to the show. In my shed right now, There is an Auburn Tiger football, a couple of Auburn Tiger hats. I do not like Nick Saban, okay? I don't always see eye to eye with President Donald Trump. He did not earn my vote. However, this is something that I could get behind 1,000%, in which I would trust Nick Saban explicitly. Because this is the entire reason that the greatest college football coach of all time hung up his whistle and retired. Because college football has become NFL light. It's become the minor leagues for the NFL. They have free agency now with the transfer portal. It's now legal to pay players. In fact, the team that won the national championship last year in Ohio State spent $20 million on their roster. Texas is spending even more than that this offseason. Things have run amok. The emperor has no clothes. The NCAA is a joke of an organization with no one at the head, no one enforcing anything, no rules, no regulations, nothing that ensures fair play across the board, and don't even get me started on the term student athlete. It doesn't exist anymore. Not when it comes to college football and basketball at major institutions. It does not exist anymore. Maybe in the lower tier conferences, maybe in other sports, but not in the big ones. Okay. And look, I see things from multiple sides here. On the one hand, I am completely fine with players being able to profit from their name, image, and likeness. They should. They should. The idea that a player for signing an autograph has to sit out for multiple games and miss out on half their season like Johnny Football is absurd. Any college student that has made a name for themselves, whether they are a TikTok influencer, whether they have been crowned the winner of a prestigious beauty pageant, those students are able to use their name, image, and likeness for their own benefit. Why not athletes who bring in millions of dollars to their college? I'm all for it. On the other hand, to pretend like a full ride to a college where you also get tutoring and nutrition and health care and travel and game tickets and a whole host of other amenities is also absurd. It's also absurd. And we have a situation now where there is no salary cap, boosters, and all these collectives that have been put together by different college alumni boards and groups are able to just fork out millions of dollars to get 5-star athletes to sign, to get kids to transfer to their school, and there's no rules that make it fair. There's nothing that evens the playing field across the board. On the one hand, it creates more parity at the top. On the other hand, it decimates the smaller schools and conferences. We're in a situation where the transfer portal is absurd, NIL is out of control, and naturally the NCAA is now announcing that they are in the process of moving from the current playoff model to one in which 16 teams make the field, a certain number of at-large bids from the SEC and the Big Ten, weighting those conferences more than any other. And something has to be done. I'm not one that normally thinks that Congress should get involved in collegiate sports. It seems like an overreach. It seems unnecessary. And yet here we are. So if Nick Saban, the greatest football coach of all time and a detail-oriented disciplinarian, wants to get involved in heading up such a task force, well, hey, I'm on board. I think this is a great idea. Tommy Tuberville, former Auburn coach who is responsible for bringing Nick Saban to Alabama, got on local radio this week and said that he was asked to join it but doesn't have the time because he's going to run for governor. But I'm all for it. I think that this can only help because the NCAA is doing nothing but sitting on their laurels and cashing checks. And to anyone who was up in arms that players were being taken advantage of before, what do you think is happening now? When the shadier parts of college sports are now in the limelight, have now been okayed. When 18-year-olds have agents and are accepting millions of dollars that they don't know how to manage. And they've never even practiced with their team. When kids can accept money and then transfer to another school and we don't know if they have to pay it back legally. When schools are continuing to rake in millions of dollars from the main three sports to then pay for the losses of every other sport, who's advising the players? Who's looking out for young people? Who's making sure that things are fair? Who is preserving the sport that we all love? It's not the NCAA. It's not ESPN or ABC or NBC. They're in it for the bag. So if Donald Trump wants to appoint Nick Saban as college football czar, college sports czar, hey, this might work for everybody. I'm on board. What do you think? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4. I would love to hear from you. From college football, we go to the NBA playoffs for our last story in sports. This week, we're in the Western Conference. The Thunder and the Nuggets are even at 2 games apiece in the best-of-7 series. The Thunder won on the road in Denver to even the series today, winning by a score of 92-87. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had 25, 6, and 6. And despite a double-double by Nikola Jokic at 27 points and 13 rebounds, the number 1 overall seed Thunder are able to even the series, heading back to Oklahoma City. And this is a series that is about as evenly matched as I have seen in recent years. The Thunder with championship pedigree, Nikola Jokic is the best player in basketball today. Aaron Gordon is playing better than he ever has in the playoffs before. Russell Westbrook has been a fireplug off the bench. Guys like Michael Porter Jr. and Brown are X factors for the Nuggets. And they're going up against a team that is the youngest team in the league, led by probable MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and 2 guys with the same name. They have 2 Jalen Williams, spelled differently, but 2 guys on one team with the same name, which I find to be delightful. Like I said, this series has been evenly matched so far, with both teams winning 1 road game. I think this one goes 7. I think this series goes 7 games. I'm still leaning toward the Nuggets. They have the best player. They've been there before. The Thunder are certainly capable of winning this series, but give me the Nuggets in 7. Also in the Western Conference, the Minnesota Timberwolves own a 2-1 advantage over my Golden State Warriors. Look, I was completely wrong on this show, on air, on record, when I talked about the trade that the Warriors made for Jimmy Butler. Because at the time I said that it was not something that I saw as being terribly impactful and that did not raise the caliber of their ability to compete for a championship. I think I may have even said something embarrassing like, what does Jimmy Butler offer at this stage in his career that you can't already get from Andrew Wiggins? That's embarrassing. Because what you get from Jimmy Butler that you do not get from Andrew Wiggins is supreme basketball IQ, tenacity, and a competitive edge that Andrew Wiggins, who I really enjoy and root for, just does not have. The Warriors looked great in Game 1, even on a quick turnaround. They looked like they had the chance to win this series, and then Steph Curry goes out with a hamstring injury. The Timberwolves win Game 2 to even the series, and then they go to Golden State, and everything went right for the Warriors last night. Until it didn't. Draymond Green is a couple technical fouls away from a suspension. Jimmy Butler gives you 30 plus. Jonathan Kuminga, who is all of a sudden playing again, gives you 27, and they still lose at home to the Timberwolves. And it comes down to the same thing that it always does for the Warriors the last several seasons. They have no size. This is a team without a center on the roster, okay? And that is not a good idea. That is not a good idea. It's also not good for the Warriors that Ant-Man Anthony Edwards went off in the fourth quarter and began to find his offensive rhythm again after struggling in the first couple of games. The Warriors are in trouble. It is a Game 7 type feel for them in their game tomorrow night. They have to win and even the series if they want to have a chance. Steph Curry will be reevaluated before Game 5, but probably won't play in that game. And if the Warriors are facing a 3-1 deficit, even if Steph comes back, their odds of winning are not good. The Timberwolves look like they're in pole position. I'm rooting for my Warriors. I'm hoping they find a way to pull out a win tomorrow night and keep this thing going until Steph Curry returns, but it does not look good. In the Eastern Conference, the Pacers take a 3-1 lead and are in full command of the series now, winning in Indianapolis tonight in blowout fashion by a score of 129-109 over Cleveland. And this in a game when Tyrese Halliburton only scored 11 points. The most overrated, air quotes, player in the league according to a poll conducted by NBA players has been phenomenal in this playoff series. And here he scores 11 points, and they still win at home to take a commanding 3-1 lead over a team that won 64 games this year and is finally back to full health after experiencing some injuries to key players. The Cavaliers are cooked. They're done. Indiana is remarkably going to the Eastern Conference Finals. They're truly a team where the sum of all their parts is greater than any individual player that they have. They've got a roster that can do it all. They're very diverse in how they can match up with you, with Pascal Siakam and Miles Turner and Nembhard and Halliburton, and topping off the bench, Mathurin and McConnell and crew. And I have to say again that Rick Carlisle is a top 5 coach in the league. He just is. The man is a winner. I know that it took a while to build things the way that they wanted to there in Indianapolis, but Rick Carlisle, especially X's and O's wise, is a top 5 coach in the NBA. And don't at me. Argue with your mama. Indianapolis closes out this series, probably not in Game 5, but certainly in Game 6, and they move on to the Eastern Conference Finals. That's how I see things. And in the other matchup in the East, you have the New York Knicks with a 2-1 lead over defending champion, the Boston Celtics. And this series has been a ton of fun to watch. In games 1 and 2, Boston jumped out to a 20-point lead, only to surrender, as though the building were surrounded. Jaylen Brown has not been very good, but Joe Mazzulla has not been very good, but Jason Tatum has been abysmal. Through the first 2 games, he was abysmal. And to his credit, he said so. He said so. I've got to play better. I've not been pulling my weight and holding up my end of the bargain. He played a little bit better in Game 3. Boston went into Madison Square Garden with all the stars out and got a win on the road. They're going to need to do so again if they want to move on to the Eastern Conference Finals and have a chance to repeat as world champions. And I think they will. Look, Tom Thibodeau is... New York fans have a love-hate relationship with him. Tom Thibodeau is a heck of a coach. He gets the best out of his players. They play in such a way that exemplifies who their head coach is. Toughness, grit, tenacity, urgency, and they've played very well. They have started off slow in games, but they have ripped the heart out of Boston twice in Boston Garden. And I think Boston returns the favor. I think this series is going to be tied up 2-2. I would not be surprised if it went 7 games as well. I'm actually rooting for the Knicks, but I still lean towards Boston. That's how I see things right now. That's where things stand in the NBA playoffs today on Mother's Day, Sunday, May the 11th. We ran a poll on Twitter. You can find us there at InTheShed4. And we asked who wins the NBA championship. This was yesterday. 40% of fans said the Cavs or the Warriors. 40% said the Celtics or the Timberwolves. 15% said the Nuggets or the Knicks. And only 5% said the Thunder or the Pacers. Nobody believes in the Thunder, even though they are the number 1 seed in the West. In the tougher conference, they're the number 1 seed, but nobody believes in the Thunder. What say you? Who do you think wins? What matchup do you find more interesting? Do you think that the Warriors have a chance to hold on until Steph returns? Will it even matter if he does? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let us know. We might even read your opinion on air. That's all the news in the world of sports this week. Let's switch to this, the news in the world of the paranormal, where our first story takes us to the rainforest. Mystery surrounds humpback whale found dead in depths of Brazil's Amazon jungle. Wildlife experts only found huge mammal after following birds of prey scavenging on carcass. Brazilian wildlife experts have been left baffled after discovering a dead humpback whale in the Amazon rainforest. The 10-ton mammal was found in the jungle undergrowth on the island of Marajo, which sits at the mouth of the Amazon River. Although scientists presume the enormous creature was hurled on shore during a storm, and that is a wild assumption. I guess it's as good as any. But that's a wild assumption. I digress. They do not understand how it came so far inland or why it was swimming off the coast in the first place. Officials from Pará State's Health, Sanitation, and Environment Department said they only found the 11-meter-long whale after following the birds of prey which were scavenging on its huge carcass. The remains were deposited in such a remote part of the mangrove swamp in the Amazonian Delta, it took 2 trips for the wildlife experts to reach the site. Marine specialists from the Bicho de Agua Institute, a conservation group based on Marajo, are part of the team examining the whale, which is thought to have died several days before it was found. Renata Eman, the institute's project leader, said, "We're still not sure how it landed here, but we're guessing that the creature was floating close to the shore and the tide, which has been pretty considerable over the past few days, picked it up and threw it inland into the mangrove. Along with this astonishing feat, we're baffled as to what a humpback whale is doing on the north coast of Brazil during February, because this is a very unusual occurrence. Humpback whales are commonly seen further south on the Bahia coast of Brazil between August and November, but very rarely travel thousands of kilometers north to the mouth of the Amazon. Ms. Amin said the whale is believed to be a calf which got separated from its mother while migrating back south. And I'm just spitballing here, but have we asked ICE? Maybe ICE was involved in separating this calf in its migration from its mother. That's dark humor. I apologize. Researchers said there were no clear reasons why the animal died, but were starting to take samples from the carcass for further study. Depending on the state of decomposition, some information may already have been lost. We're collecting as much information as we can get and identifying marks and wounds on its body to see if it was caught in a net or hit by a boat, Ms. Amin said. Darlene Silva from the State Environment Department told local television that the body of the whale would be left where it crash-landed into the jungle. It's very difficult to get there, and there's no way that we can send a bulldozer because it would not get through. There's no way to remove it. To get there, we need to cross the swamp. The skeleton of the humpback will, however, be dismantled, preserved, and then sent to a natural history museum in the city of Belém for future study. So I don't even want to hear it. I don't even want to get the emails to the show that we often get when we incorporate a story about wildlife in the paranormal segment. Hey, this doesn't belong. This was not paranormal. Look, a humpback whale was found in the Amazon jungle. That is not normal, okay? That is bizarre. That is wild. Literally. This is newsworthy because it does not happen. That they found a humpback whale calf in the mangroves of the Amazon jungle deep in the rainforest of Brazil. And they cannot explain it. They don't know how it got there. They don't know what happened. They have some speculation about it being separated from its mother, about the tides, about a storm, about it being tossed. This 11-meter long, several ton being tossed inland. But they really don't know. This is something that I came across, that I read, I didn't see reported anywhere else. So, of course, I bring it to you, my tools, my babies, my people, on In the Shed with Wes Anderson. We cover the animal kingdom like no other. How did this humpback whale get into the Amazon jungle? How did it wind up so far from where it was supposed to be? What happened? We may never know. But I think it's interesting. There's that word again. I think it's fascinating. I thought it was worthwhile and worth bringing to you. And so I did, because it's all about you, my people. It's all for you. The 50-foot extension cord is plugged in. I'm bringing you the stories they don't talk about elsewhere. It's why you love us. What do you think happened here? How do you explain this? Is this something? Is this nothing? Do you find it to be as interesting as I do? Email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Get at us on Twitter at intheshed4 and let me know. From the Amazon jungle, we go to Illinois for our next story. Illinois woman reports sighting of humanoid creature with large grayish black wings while waiting in Culver's drive-thru. And of course she was waiting in the Culver's drive-thru. Why wouldn't she be waiting in a Culver's drive-thru? The following report was received by Unsolved Mysteries after the release of their Mothman episode, and later sent to investigators Lon Strickler and Tobias Wayland, who's been on the show. I added that. That wasn't in the article, but, he was on the show, both of whom were featured in the Unsolved Mysteries episode. According to the report sent to Unsolved Mysteries, it was March 5th, 2024, and I was going to Culver's for my free birthday burger with my son and was waiting at the drive-thru pickup window at about 5:30 p.m. It was turning dark and I was looking at the sky when I saw this creature-like figure with large grayish black wings and gray muscular legs. It looked like it took a frog leap off of a rooftop and sprung through the air super fast, and looked as if it landed 4 blocks southwest at a community park called Circle Park in Evergreen Park, Illinois. I felt compelled to report this sighting after my daughter informed me of the episode of Unsolved Mysteries about the encounters and sightings of Mothman in the Chicagoland area. Strickler said he was able to make contact with the witness via email, which led to a phone interview. The witness agreed to the use of her first name, Lisa. She stated that on Tuesday, March 5th, 2024, while waiting for an order in the drive-thru at the Culver's restaurant at 9515 South Kedzie Avenue in Evergreen Park, Illinois, she observed a flying humanoid figure in the sky. Evergreen Park, Illinois is a suburb located southwest of downtown Chicago, Strickler said. The humanoid was flying very quickly and seemed to be leapfrogging across the sky, quickly moving from one point to another. Strickler went on to say that Lisa described the creature's wings as angel-like. These wings, she said to the investigator, never unfurled, but remained stationary, extending from the back. Furthermore, he related the winged humanoid had very long legs, and the overall body was estimated at 7 feet in length, though it was large enough that details were observed. The legs were quite muscular and defined. The humanoid was grayish-black in color from head to toe. Lisa reportedly observed the creature from around 1 block away and watched as it descended and most likely landed in Circle Park, which is a few blocks southwest of the Culver's restaurant, Strickler said. Lisa was very cooperative, precise, and forthcoming while describing her observation, Strickler said of the witness. Because of its proximity to other sighting locations, the creature described in the above report could be related to the larger Lake Michigan Mothman phenomenon. Do phenomenon. Do phenomenon. Do da 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 da. Those sightings are commonly reported within a few 100-mile radius surrounding Lake Michigan, including every state bordering the Great Lake. The sightings ostensibly began in the spring of 2017, but more historical accounts are being reported as more people become aware of the phenomenon. We already did the song. They generally take place in the evening or at night, often in or near a park or natural area, and around water. Witnesses consistently describe a large gray, brown, or black bat or bird-like creature, sometimes with glowing or reflective red, yellow, or orange eyes, and humanoid features such as an upright bipedal posture are often reported. Some witnesses have reported feeling intense fear and an aura of evil emanating from the creature they encountered. Many of the sightings are also of something seen only briefly or are described only as a flying creature with few details, which leaves open the possibility that a misidentified large bird, such as a heron or crane, or some type of anomalous avian species could explain some, although certainly not all of the encounters. A number of associated high strangeness incidents have also occurred alongside the creature sightings. These include reports of UFOs, other anomalous flying creatures, and mysterious humanoids, parapsychological phenomena, and bizarre events experienced by those investigating the sightings. So, a lady at a Culver's drive-thru in the greater Chicago area apparently saw a 7-foot tall, or maybe long would be the better way to say it, flying humanoid creature. I think I would be mystified and potentially terrified as well if I were to see that. This is surprisingly common in the greater Chicago area. If you're listening to the show, you're probably familiar with the Mothman, whose legend began in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, about 30 miles from where my pawpaw grew up. Meemaw's husband. Yeah, my grandpa. But since 2017, similar sightings and reports have increased in number in the Chicagoland area. In the Lake Michigan area, referred to as the Lake Michigan Mothman because a lot of the sightings line up so well with what has been attributed to the Mothman sightings in West Virginia. There was an episode of Unsolved Mysteries that covered this very thing. Tobias Whalen, who had been a guest on this show before, was featured in that episode. And I find Tobias to be someone who is very thorough as an investigator. He's no nonsense. He looks for evidence. He certainly has an open mind, but he is no doubt an investigator. And he and Lon Strickler investigate these sightings when they're reported to them, when they come across their desk. I mean, this one happened at a Culver's, where you can apparently get a free burger on your birthday. You're welcome for that knowledge. I don't know what to make of this sighting. I don't know what to make of those in the Chicago area who are reportedly seeing humanoid creatures flying through the sky, gliding, with wings extended, and a sense of trepidation and fear overcoming them. It usually happens at night, and it's certainly sensible that they are misidentifying a large bird, as the article said, like a crane, a sand crane maybe. However, I think a lot of people could also distinguish between the two, which makes this sighting kind of creepy and kind of foreboding, and I don't know what to make of it. Are they seeing an angel? Are they seeing a demon? Are they seeing an unidentified animal also known as a cryptid? Is it the Mothman? How do you make sense of this story? What do you think is going on? What's happening in Chicago? The new pope is from Chicago. Maybe we will find out about these Lake Michigan Mothman sightings because the new pope will let us know what's happening in the city that Michael Jordan built. From unidentified flying humanoids in Illinois, we go to Harvard for our next story. Harvard scientist says God exists and there's mathematical proof. A Harvard astrophysicist, Dr. Willie Soon, claims that a mathematical formula provides evidence for God's existence. Speaking on the Tucker Carlson network, Dr. Soon referenced the fine-tuning argument, which suggests the universe's physical laws are precisely calibrated for life, making it unlikely that this occurred by chance. He highlighted the asymmetry between matter and antimatter as evidence of intentional design. After the Big Bang, matter and antimatter formed together, but the universe now has far less antimatter. If they were equal, they would annihilate each other, leaving nothing behind. This imbalance, Dr. Soon argues, points to a designed universe. Dr. Soon said, "There are so many examples of the ever-present forces that allow us to illuminate our lives. God has given us this light to follow the light and to do the best that we can." Dr. Soon cited the work of Paul Dirac, the father of antimatter, who predicted its existence in 1928 through a groundbreaking equation. Dirac combined Einstein's E equals mc squared with Schrödinger's quantum mechanics equation to explain subatomic particles moving faster than light. His solution introduced a negatively charged electron, which initially baffled scientists, but was later confirmed in 1932 with the discovery of antimatter and cosmic rays. Dirac's work led to quantum field theory, revolutionizing physics. In 1963, Dirac described God as a mathematician of a very high order, noting the universe's mathematical elegance. It seems to be one of the fundamental features of nature that fundamental physical laws are described in terms of mathematical theory of great beauty and power, needing quite a high standard of mathematics for one to understand it, he wrote. You may wonder, why is nature constructed along these lines? One can only answer that our present knowledge seems to show that nature is so constructed. We simply have to accept it. One could perhaps describe this situation by saying that God is a mathematician of a very high order, and he used very advanced mathematics in constructing the universe. Other experts like Richard Swinburne and Robin Collins have also argued for fine-tuning in the universe. They point to the precise strength of gravity, the proton-to-electron mass ratio, and the cosmological constant as evidence. So, spoiler alert, I did not go to Harvard University. I'm not a smart man. I did apply. Believe it or not, I did apply to Harvard. I only applied to 3 colleges out of high school. I took the ACT one time, the last time that was offered when I was in high school, and then applied to 3 colleges. The one where I went, Huntington College in Montgomery, Alabama, Auburn University, and Harvard. And I had already decided that I was going to go to Huntington and play basketball when I got my letter from Harvard. And I knew that if I opened it and by some divine miracle had been accepted, I would have to go to Massachusetts and go to school. So I threw it away. I kid you not, I threw it away. I did not even open it. I'm 99.9% sure I did not get in, but if I did, I never knew it. Look, Dr. Soon is far more educated than I. He can put things in a language that I can barely comprehend or explain to you. But I can tell you this. His conclusion is the same one that I have reached in my 35 years on this planet with my knowledge and experience and study on the topic. If you don't believe in God, look, you are still welcome here. In My Shed. This is a show for everybody. We have listeners from all political viewpoints that root for different sports teams, that see things differently. However, I make no bones about it. I am a follower of Jesus Christ. I have looked at the world and concluded that in fact there was a designer. There is a God who is real, who spoke the earth into existence, who created things. The means and the time frame that he used to do so don't matter to me as much as the fact that he is the one that did it. And you can know him. You can have relationship with him through his son, Jesus Christ. That's my soapbox. That's what I believe. If you don't, that's okay, but I encourage you to investigate, to ask questions, to do your homework. And you may not find proof, but you surely will find evidence. And in my untrained opinion, that's what this Harvard-trained scientist and mathematician is pointing out. That there is evidence in the universe, and the way that the world is laid out and lined up, that points to the fact that, hey, there's probably a creator. And if there is, don't you want to know him? If there is, don't you want to know how you are supposed to live? It's an important topic. It's an important question with a lot of implications for how you should live as a human being. And I invite you to take the journey. I certainly have. I've drawn my own conclusions. And I love you no matter what, okay? You're welcome here no matter what. But if you need help on your journey, I invite you to email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Reach out on Twitter at intheshed4. Send me a DM. I would love to share with you what I've experienced. From Harvard University, we go to Abbeville, Alabama for our last story this week. The haunting stories behind Huggin Molly. And yeah, that's Huggin apostrophe. Huggin Molly. We all appreciate a warm, loving hug once in a while. But when you're a kid and alone out in the street at night, and that hug comes from a 7-foot-tall witch dressed in a black coat, it's a completely different story. Every Abbeville native grew up and listened wide-eyed to their parents telling them the story of Huggin Molly. You're alone. It's dark outside, and you didn't listen to your parents to be home and indoors before sunset. You hear footsteps behind you as you walk home in the moon's glow. Not another soul in sight. You stop to listen. Nothing. You take another footstep. There it is again. You take a deep breath. Maybe it's just your imagination. You start walking faster. The footsteps also pick up speed. Let me hurry to that streetlight, you think, hoping the island of safety in the pitch black night will be your saving grace. But just as you reach the streetlight's warm glow, the light goes out, and the dark envelops you. And then in an instant, you feel strong arms grab you, fold around you, and start squeezing the life out of you as a shrilling scream deafens your ears. Huggin Molly's story has been told from generation to generation in the small town of Abbeville, Alabama. From a young age, all Abbeville children knew Huggin Molly and not to be on the street after dark. As Jimmy Rain, the longtime Abbeville native, recalls, if your mother or dad didn't want you to be out after dark, they'd tell you Huggin Molly would get you. And you believed it too. His father told him and a friend that he was one night grabbed and given a huge hug by Huggin Molly, scaring them witless and making the story of the hugging witch even more real for the two young lads. Huggin Molly, according to legend, is a tall 7-foot witch. Dressed in a big dark coat and huge wide-brim hat, Huggin Molly would lurk in the dark, waiting for a child on the streets alone after sunset to stalk, pounce on, and give a huge hug. Though Molly never really harmed any of her victims, except for a ringing in your ear after her shrilling scream, kids in Abbeville grew up knowing you hurried home and indoors when the day was over and it became dark outside. Huggin Molly would strike on nights, lit only by the moon's glow, stalking young kids walking the dark streets alone. Little boys, they say, are her victims of choice. No one knows who Huggin Molly is or where she came from. Some claim Molly is the ghost of a mother who lost a young child and now roams the street trying to find her long-lost boy. Others say Huggin Molly worked as a professor at the former local college, the Southwest Alabama Agricultural School, and that she roamed the streets at night to scare young people off the street and in their own unique way. Another more scary retelling is that Huggin Molly was the ghost of the woman killed one night on the dark streets of Abbeville, now trying to warn others of the dangers that lurk in the dark. So fascinated and scared was Jimmy Rain with the story of Huggin Molly that he opened a 50s themed restaurant in her honor in 2006. Huggin Molly's on 129 Kirkland Street, Abbeville, promises visitors a trip down memory lane that is filled with 1950s music, memorabilia, antiques, and knickknacks from years gone by. The local eatery pays homage to Huggin Molly with a special prepared dish called Molly's Fingers and boasts an authentic soda fountain. So, the legend of Huggin Molly. A very underrated one when it comes to urban legends of the sort. And it's based right here in my home state of Alabama, in the Wiregrass region where I spent a bulk of my childhood. I never heard of this story until I was in my 20s in college. And it's certainly a creepy one that if you are walking home and the street lamps are off, you have to look out for Huggin Molly. A 7-foot-tall witch or ghost or entity that will sneak up behind you. You can hear the footsteps even though you don't see her. And she will overtake you in her arms, give you a bear hug, and squeeze the life out of you. That's terrifying. It's a frightening story even as I record this episode of the show in my shed in the backyard of my home in Alabama in the middle of the night, in the dark. It's a terrifying story. Almost 90% sure that there is little to no truth to this story. It's just an urban legend that parents told their kids to make sure that they got home on time. And I'm sure it was effective. But the legend of Huggin Molly persists from the land of Abbeville, Alabama. And now it's on the internet. I always thought that Huggin Molly would do better in our In the Shed with Wes Anderson tournament of the weird, but unfortunately not enough people know about this local ghost story. And so I wanted to cover it and share it on the show. I have not been to the restaurant. I would love to go and try it out, not just for the food, but for the atmosphere. It's a cool urban legend, but I think that that's all it is. That's all for this week. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. I can't either. It's back in the house and out of the shed for me. Thanks again for listening to episode 88. Make sure to subscribe, like, share, and review. It really does help. If you have any paranormal experiences, opinions about sports or politics that you'd like to share, you can email the show at intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. Again, that's intheshedwithwes@gmail.com. I might even read it on air. Look for us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, the Good Pods app, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And make sure to follow us on X at InTheShed4, as well as subscribe to our YouTube channel at In the Shed with Wes Anderson 6670. Tune in again next week when we'll hit the headlines, talk some sports, and dive into the mysterious story of Indrid Cold together. This has been In the Shed with Wes Anderson, the best news show in the land covering politics, sports, and the paranormal. Have an adventurous and fulfilling week. I'll catch you tools later. Peace out, Boy Scouts. Meemaw, we made it.
We sure did.